Einen schönen guten Abend. Ich freue mich sehr, dass ich Sie heute begrüßen darf zu unserer Veranstaltung Zurück in Afghanistan. Mein Name ist Sybille Straubinger, ich bin die Direktorin des VIDC. Man sieht, das Thema Afghanistan ist ein Thema auch in Österreich. Es ist schön, dass so viele gekommen sind, dass es so ein großes Interesse auch daran gibt und dass Sie unserer Einladung gefolgt sind. Wenn wir über Afghanistan sprechen hier in Österreich, dann sprechen wir in letzter Zeit meistens darüber, wie viele Flüchtlinge kommen, dass Asylbescheide nicht anerkannt werden bzw. nicht gegeben werden, dass nach Afghanistan wieder abgeschoben wird. Und das wird diskutiert und es wird zu Recht diskutiert, denn wenn man einmal kurz googelt, die aktuellsten Nachrichten zu Afghanistan, dann sieht man sehr schnell, wie unsicher die Sicherheitslage in Afghanistan ist. Der größte Teil der Flüchtlinge, der afghanischen Flüchtlinge, befindet sich nicht in Europa, sondern wie meist quasi in den Ländern gleich angrenzend, in diesem Fall in Pakistan und im Iran. Das sieht man auch daran, dass von Jänner bis September 2018 rund 570.000 Flüchtlinge zurückgegangen sind nach Afghanistan oder auch zurückgeschickt wurden. Dort geht es natürlich zum einen um die Sicherheitslage, aber es geht natürlich auch um die Frage des wirtschaftlichen Überlebens, eine Frage, der sich die Studie des VIDC angenähert hat, die Studie, die wir heute Ihnen auch präsentieren und zu der wir auch das Podium auch diskutiert. Und da darf ich jetzt gleich die Gelegenheit nutzen, auch mich bei jenen zu bedanken, die diese Studie erstellt haben und möglich gemacht haben. Allen voran Ahmad als Studienautor und Michael Fanizadeh als Herausgeber, als Koordinator und auch als Organisator der heutigen Veranstaltung, unseren Partner der Caritas und natürlich auch der Austrian Development Agency als Fördergeber. Herzlichen Dank euch und Ihnen allen. Es freut mich auch sehr, dass es Suraya Pakzad, Gründerin und Direktorin von Voice of Women Organization, möglich war, heute nach Wien zu kommen, denn in der Studie geht es ganz besonders um die nochmal schwierigere Situation von Frauen in Afghanistan. Schön, dass Sie da sind. Welcome to Vienna. Nice to have you here. Und dass das gar nicht so einfach ist, das zeigt sich auch daran, dass es erst vor kurzem einem afghanischen Minister bei einer internationalen Konferenz, zu der er eingeladen war, des ICMPD, gerade mal gelungen ist, ein 72-Stunden-Schengen-Visum zu bekommen, sozusagen, und nicht länger. Jemandem, dem es leider nicht gelungen ist, ein Visum zu bekommen, der heute eigentlich hier hätte auch teilnehmen sollen, ist Emal Haidary, der für die Studie Interviews geführt hat in Afghanistan mit Expertinnen und mit Rückkehrerinnen. Es ist sozusagen leider nicht gelungen, ihn hier zu haben, aber wir werden ihn sozusagen zumindest in einem Video hier haben, in einem Interview, das wir Ihnen dann präsentieren können. Immerhin sozusagen, wir werden ihn hören und sehen können, wenn auch nicht live. Ja, und last but not least möchte ich mich namens des VIDC auch bei den vielen afghanischen Vereinen bedanken. Nicht nur dafür, dass sie sozusagen eine großartige Arbeit hier im Inland leisten, sich um neu Ankommende kümmern, ihnen den Start ermöglichen und helfen, sondern heute im aktuellen Fall auch dafür, dass sie auch die Veranstaltung hier so unterstützt haben und beworben haben. Vielen Dank auch für diese gute Zusammenarbeit.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's event is part of our focus on the situation in the Middle East and on our focus on migration and development. When we have discussed about the focus of our panel's discussion today, we witnessed two important issues. First, the situation of returnees in Afghanistan in regard to social conditions and the labor market, here with a special focus on women. And second, security concerns and the actual political and social situation in Afghanistan. In regard to the situation of returnees, as Sybille Straubinger already mentioned, and according to IOM, between January and September 2018, more than 570,000 people had to return from Pakistan and Iran. I think you all are aware about that in 2016, again, 500,000 people had to return from Pakistan at that time. So this is a massive influx back to the country. Most of those people come from Iran today. Since thousands of Afghani men and women have to leave due to the ongoing economic crisis, and on top of that, deportees and returnees are coming from Europe, as you're all aware. Within the first 6 months of 2018, IOM calculated more than 1,700 voluntary returns from Europe, about 1,200 alone from Turkey. And the Afghani Minister for Refugees and Repatriation, Syed Hussein Alemi Balki, counted additional 700 deportees from Europe in 2017. We have no numbers for 2018, which are liable at the moment. In regard to the security and the political and social situation, we all know Afghanistan is not a safe country. If proof is still needed, the bombings and rocket attacks around the parliamentary elections this October cost more than 107 people who have been killed and wounded alone throughout the first day of the voting, with at least 18 people killed and 67 injured in blasts near polling stations in the capital, Kabul. No, Afghanistan is not a safe country. Therefore, VIDC is supporting the initiative Sicher Sein against expulsions to Afghanistan. We'll find more information about the campaign on our information desk outside. The campaign is coordinated by Volkshilfe, Diakonie, Asylkoordination, and others. I think it's a very important initiative, and we are happy to support this. If that security problem wasn't enough, Afghanistan is now affected also by a serious ecological disaster. According to the United Nations, a total number of 275,000 people have been displaced by drought in Western Afghanistan alone this year. I could continue like this, but I will focus now on my two guests on the panel. The third speaker, as we already heard, Emal Haidary, have been planned to come but failed to receive a visa. Although he is a journalist by Agence France Presse, so we thought it should be possible to bring him here. But before showing the interview with him, let me introduce our first distinguished guest from Afghanistan, Suraya Pakzad. Suraya is a women's rights activist from Herat. She's founding director of the Voice of Women organization, a non-profit organization which offers Afghani women and girls accommodation and counseling, as well as supporting them with vocational training and literacy. The organization also runs shelters for women and girls who have been subjected to violence. Pakzad has received numerous awards for her commitment to the protection of women's rights in Afghanistan. In 2012, she was voted Female Leader of the Year by the Female Leadership Foundation in Germany. And in 2010, she was awarded with the Peace Jirga Award for her active participation in the National Consultative Peace Jirga. With us on the panel is also my colleague, Dr. Ali Ahmad. Ali works at VIDC and holds a master's degree in Peace and Conflict Studies. For VIDC, he has conducted 3 studies so far. First, a report about the evaluation of the media from 2002 until 2014 in Afghanistan. The second research was on the perception of gender relations and gender-based violence of Afghans living in Austria. And now finally, and already mentioned, a report on Afghanistan's labor market and the status of women. Ali is also a journalist. You could read his latest analysis on Afghanistan in the brand new issue of Südwind magazine. He is one of the magazines. You find copies of all Südwind magazines, because this is very brand new, outside again on the information desk. But we will start now with the video with Emal. I had the chance to speak with him last week via Skype, so the quality is not the very best, but I think it fits for our purpose. My first question is about the actual situation in Kabul before and after the parliamentary elections. especially about the security situation. As journalists from Agence France Presse, how have you experienced the last couple of weeks?
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for giving me the opportunity actually to talk to your audience and to you today. Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't get a visa actually to come to Vienna and talk to people, talk to you in person. But well, I'm glad that I'm here on the Skype and I talk to you. About your question, well, generally, the security incidents or insecurity has been increasing in Afghanistan by year, by month, by day. And, during the election day, like this was a unique type of election this time. It took 2 days and, there were more than 2,500 candidates. And then the election day was really violent. We recorded in Kabul alone, actually, which is the capital, we recorded around 20 bomb blasts and a suicide attack during the election day. And then we also did a counting of the violence all around the country. There were like around 65 people killed during the election day, more than 300 wounded in different attacks on polling centers. It was really violent. And since then, actually, whether election or not election, the security is getting worse and worse. Like, it's like, I mean, and I don't see any change. It's been constantly getting worse and worse. So even before the election, the attacks were on the rise, insecurity was on the rise. After the election, we have had some quiet days, but then we have reports of attacks here and there and all around the country. So it's not like looking very good. If you have noticed recently, like a couple of days ago, I have the report here, a US organization called Gallup did a survey. They interviewed around 1,000 Afghans in Afghanistan, and they wanted to know whether what the Afghans thought about their country's future, or whether they thought it was going toward the right direction. And it was amazing, actually, how the Afghans have become pessimistic of the situation. Here, the report says, the finding of this report, that out of 10, 2.7 of them think that security is okay. Only 2%, 2.5, like, it's a very low, the lowest percentage of that this organization has recorded since they have started their service. They're doing the survey every year, like since they started in 2008. So like it's not looking very good. There are efforts there, which is like happens every year, but even the Afghans are not very optimistic about the result of that peace efforts as well.
But under such circumstances, is it not a success that the elections took place? Was it important? Because it was, for us from outsider perspective, it's always difficult to understand. But the elections, for me, it seems to be very important to show Taliban that the government is still in place and can organize.
Yes, it is the election. The fact that it took place, the fact that it happened all over the country, and also the fact that the turnout was really big, and the people were waiting in lines for hours actually to go and vote. This is a very positive sign, actually, that the people want. Well, it also shows that the people want some changes. They want to see some changes in their lives. They are tired of the old faces in the parliament. They want new people, new faces to be their representatives in the parliament. This is a kind of a light of hope for the future, that the people want changes, and in any cost, even if it costs their lives, actually, even if the blasts or attacks kill them during the election. But they want to see some changes, and that's why they came out in huge numbers. And they took the risk to go out and vote.
So thank you. Emal, you conducted as director of the Afghanistan Development and Peace Research Organization in-depth interviews for us. for our study on the labor market in Afghanistan. Ali will later on present the major findings, but I want to ask you about the situation in the settlements nearby Kabul, Parwan, and Nangarhar. You and your team visited for the interviews. How is the situation for the returnees from Pakistan at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did this research actually the research was supposed to be completed in a couple of months, but it took us a little longer. It's because of the insecurity and some other challenges that we faced, like lack of data, lack of information about refugees and labor market, and all that we have listed it in our report. Well, this refugee situation in the camps, as you can imagine, it's not very good actually. More and more people are becoming IDPs inside the country. It's because of insecurity. It's because of the drought, severe drought that's facing Afghanistan nowadays. So it's not only refugees who are coming in big numbers from neighboring countries, mostly Pakistan and Iran. It's also the internally displaced people who are moving around the country from one camp to another person, people who have had lives, who have had houses, because of their provinces, because of insecurity, and also because of drought. They're moving around. So it's like you have camps where the refugees are settled. You know the address. You also have people on the move who are always on the plot. Some of them are refugees who had better lives in Pakistan or in Iran, but they chose to come back to the country. But unfortunately, the country was not ready for them to accept them. So they are still in need. They are still in need of international community support. In camps in Borikov, for example, Borikov was like just a desert. It was a place where nobody left, but the government gave them those pieces of land without any infrastructures. Like the main problem that we found in Borikov camp, which is close to Kabul, was that people were complaining that there was no water for them, first of all, very essential thing. And then jobs is the second biggest needs for refugees. They have to commute like for 1 hour to come to the city. Sometimes they can't find jobs and they go back empty-handed to their camps. And in Jalalabad, like people are not very welcomed in camps because some refugees have lived in Pakistan for a long time, and then even their families, people who are in Afghanistan, the host community, don't easily accept them into the society anymore. They call them Pakistanis, or they call them, bad names. So it's not. They are really in dire need of reintegration. There have been some NGOs and non-governmental organizations who have been constantly supporting, but their support is not something to change their lives. They're only, every project which is implemented in one of these refugee camps has some sort of shortcomings. If they teach them skills, there have been some projects that teach refugees new skills, like they teach women embroidery or needling or sewing, but then they fail to find them a market for their projects. So a woman produces something, or a man as a skill produces something, there's no market for them. So, the projects have been, there have been a lot of money invested in these the projects which have nobody has thought about the sustainability of the projects. They've just gone there to implement the projects and come back. That kind of adds up to the problems that the refugees have in the camps already.
So Emal, thank you for the interview. I think it's, again, a real pity not to have you in person in Vienna. It would be very interesting to discuss these issues directly, but at least via Skype, and I hope to see you in the future in person and in reality. Thank you, Emal. Suraya, how is the situation in Herat right now?
Okay, thank you so much. Michael. Let me to say, for ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, let me to express my gratitude to the Vienna Institute of International Dialogue and Cooperation for organizing this important event, and also a special thanks to Mr. Michael and Mr. Dr. Ali inviting me and bringing me here in this very important dialogue tonight to have the opportunity to talk to you. Indeed, this dialogue happened in a very important time in Afghanistan, because it seems that Afghanistan once again going to be ignored by the international community, the same as we had the experience back in after Cold War in 1992 to 1996, which the result was the establishment of the Taliban because of that 6 years civil war in the country, and that's we are paying the high price for establishment of the Taliban and 6 years of the Taliban presence in Afghanistan. The work that the organization that today I'm running in Afghanistan began in a very dark time of Taliban presence of Afghanistan. In 1998, 2 years after the power of the Taliban to the whole Afghanistan, actually I was waiting for the international community reaction for a day, a week, a month, a year, that international community will react and rescue Afghan people from that suppressive regime and from that horrible situation that we have been gone through. But unfortunately, it took a long time. I was waiting for a long time. Then after 2 years, then I thought with myself, what should I do for the people of my country? What's my responsibility? What's my capacity? How should I start it? And some point, I should do it today, because tomorrow it would be late. That time I was living in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan, and I had 4 children and living in a rented apartment with 3 bedrooms. I turned one of the bedrooms of my apartment to a makeshift class for the girls. I saw the demand is going high every day. I was not able to, I was teaching them from morning to noon, and then another shift came from afternoon to evening. But the demand was very high, and that was the basic right. That was the only basic things that I could offer to the girls at that time. I was knocked the door of my friends, and I encouraged them, and I telling them that that's our responsibility. We have to do some things for these girls which are going to be without education in front of our eyes. And by the end of the year, we had 10 girls homeschooled in 10 different districts of Kabul city. 300 girls were enrolled in our makeshift cohort school with no financial support of anyone, just a group of dedicated women with hearts full of hope for the future, teaching girls. But that was not easy. That was attached with lots of risk and threats. The Taliban was announced education call ban, and they were so-called their laws established in a way that no one should be involved with education for girls. But we went through like against the storm and against the direction. I was teaching the girls, and the first girls session, when the first girls entered to the class, I was thinking the only challenges that girls in my country are going through, and women in my country are going through, is the education. But later on, working with the girls program, I realized that lack of access to justice, lack of economical independency of women is a bigger problem. Then I thought, what should I do for that? How we should start? And then I start knocking the door of the donor. Education was for free on volunteer base. I paid from my own. I bought books and encouraged my friends to do the same. But for vocational training, for income-generating activities, for hiring a lawyer for women who are seeking legal aid and legal support, required some financial support. And we were knocking the donor's door. All the donors, when we reached them, the first question the donor asked me, are you a registered organization? And then I was thinking, oh, it is $1 million question, how I should answer that. No, not, because how we can go and show ourselves to the Taliban and telling them that we do underground activities, please give us the certificates for that. That was really difficult, but we were just trying to find different ways. And at that time, we were making our policies and our papers to require for the organization registration to go to Pakistan and register under the umbrella, which was established that time in Taliban in Pakistan by the name of ANCB. But we were lucky that before the assembly of ANCB take place, Taliban fall from the country. We, after 3 days, Voice of Women, the organization that we established in that small apartment room, we showed up for the government and we told them that we are here to support women of Afghanistan in some ways in our capacity. So from Kabul, we went to Herat to provide some services for the people, for women in Herat. As I mentioned, the access to justice was one of the major challenges on that time. Then I opened the first women's shelter in Herat, women's safe houses for women, for young girls, and for women running away from domestic violence, from forced marriages and child marriages, back in 2005. The day that I opened that shelter publicly, and it is published in newspapers and on TV, I got the religious leaders and clergy issue a religious edict against me to kill me and kill my family, because from their point of view, running a safe houses is something against the culture. It is a Western practice or a kind of idea coming from the Western, and we would like to implement in Afghanistan and encourage Afghan women to get divorced from their husband. I was not even thinking that I would be survived with that all death threats that I'm receiving day to day from those perpetrators and religious leaders and extremists. But thank God, with the support of international community, which is really, I appreciate it, with my friends, now our organization running 5 women safe houses in the western region of Afghanistan. In the most difficult provinces, my Afghan friends, they know the area. The western region is quite, Herat is much better than, it is the second biggest city in the country, but Ghor, Badghis, Farah, and Nimruz are quite backwarded area, and Taliban has more presence over there. Working on those areas and talking about women's issue is not an easy task to do. And also the organization that I'm running is today, start from that small apartment, is working, we have our presence in 29 provinces of Afghanistan with a staff of 200 plus. The reason that I shared that story and start with this point is that I keep hearing that violence against women is an Afghan culture. It is just, they're born with that kind of violation, to be a violated person against their daughter, against their wife. And this is a culture issue. We should not support this kind of project, and it's not going to be solved. I'm sharing that story that I grew up in a family of, my parents are Afghan. My father provided me the same opportunity of education for me, the same for my brother. I educated in that family, and my husband is a supportive person from the beginning, from the day of establish my organization up to now. He's supporting me. He's a man. He's an Afghan man. And I have 3 sons, and my children are also supporting me. So they are all aside me and support my idea and helping me to run my organization. So it is, I would like to say it's like a war culture. It is not an Afghan culture to be to violate their wives and wife or daughters or female member of their family. So today I'm very happy to tell you the main half of the colleagues of my organization are men. They are very supportive. They are proud to work with Voice of Women. They are proud to provide services for needy women, women running away from such kind of domestic situation. And I'm witnessing a number of times we receive a case from a very difficult situation of violation. She came to our services. When we are sharing her story to the colleagues, they were not able to stop their tears. They share their sympathy. They are with us. So they are men. They are typical Afghan men. So that's why I'm 100% sure, and I have the courage to say that this culture is totally a war culture created by war and keep the people backwarded, keep the country backwarded. It's 40 years that war continue in Afghanistan. And it is obvious in any kind of situation, in any crisis from the civil war from 1992 to 1996, Taliban presence in Afghanistan, and up to now, in any crisis, women and children are the most affected group on that kind of circumstances and on that kind of situation. So if we are looking for development of a country, if we are looking to support a country, we have to look for women development project. It's a famous philosophy. They said, no country can truly prosper without the full participation of its female in the nation building. So if we are going to implement a project in Afghanistan, the project should be centered on women and children. But unfortunately today, beside the number of issues that Afghanistan is already facing to them, violence against women, lack of easy access to justice, formal and informal justice system in the local area implementing by Taliban, insecurity, lack of access to secondary school for number of girls in so many areas. Number of schools are closed down by the Taliban because areas are collapsed in the hand of the Taliban. Drought became another issue. Drought in the western region, a severe drought began, and which the result of that drought, I think at the time that I'm talking to you, 12,000 families displaced from their origin, from their provinces to Herat city. And it is like 85 to 90,000 individuals. They are living in a very basic camps, and this winter is just already there. That winter will be deadly winter for a number of young children and elderly people who are living under that circumstances. Those refugees are in immediate need of shelter, food, health services, and access to their basic right. Young girls and young children are there with no any type of basic support for them. Unfortunately, within those camps, we keep hearing information and reports of violence against women within the camp as well. Because when people are displaced, when people are leaving everything behind, and there is no future for them, of course, mostly men of the family as well as women are going through mental issues, or psychologically they are going through a trauma because they are losing everything, and then the situation, of course, is not a pleasant situation in the camp. And also the poverty is another issue which badly affects the life of the people in the camp. The recent news we are hearing is that, unfortunately, that is a shocking news that 71 children, only I'm talking about this last 4 months, that 71 children aged between 7 to 10 years old sold by their families. Because of that severe poverty, they sold on a way like forced marriages. Even children as young as 7 years old, they sold. And when you are talking with their families, they are aware about the bad decision that they had to make, but the answer is that I have to survive the rest of the family. Government lack the capacity to provide at least basic services to them. So I think this is the time, and today we have to do some things for them today. Tomorrow it may be too late. Government only approved the sold of 10 children. The rest, they denied the exact number of them, but for me, one child being sold in 21st century is with bunch of international convention and legislation to protect children is something that no one can forgive. It is our responsibility to do some things today to save their lives for tomorrow. And at the same time, Iran government, because of the recent sanction, are keep sending refugees by force back to Afghanistan. Even there's two types. One is they call them the so-called volunteer deportees, volunteer returnees. But most of them are just coming because there is no option for them. And deportees, they are just capture them from the street and send them to Afghanistan. And it's happened that at midnight they brought a single woman to our safe houses that she doesn't have a place to stay. She is in need of safe refuge. When we had the interview and she was crying and she said that I left behind 2 daughters and I just locked them in the room. I was on the supermarket on the way to get some bread. They arrested me and put me in the camp, and then finally I end up here. My children are locked there. Even they are captured the children, the women or anyone from the street and send them back to Afghanistan. And those people who lived long time in Iran, they don't know anything about Afghanistan. When they return back to Afghanistan, unfortunately, there is no social welfare program by the government in place to help them to find a job, to help them to housing them or give them some time to adjust and adapt with the society, which is completely new for them and for their children. Unfortunately, they have to stay on their own and they have to find their way. While the job market is so bad nowadays, there is lots of people jobless and there is not job available in the market because of the insecurity. Lots of businesses are closing every year. We are not hearing a good message of establishing a new business to create jobs. Unfortunately, we keep hearing messages that people are closing down their businesses and moving to the neighbor's country for just save their money and save their families. Kidnapping is, or abduction is another another challenge, another problem in Afghanistan. The people who have money, the rich people, are always targeted. Their young children, mostly sons, are abducted, and then for ransom, they are asking for like huge amount of money, like that they called for $300,000, $400,000 just to give them in one time. Otherwise, they will kill. Just last week, 3 days back, I heard the news that the recent young by a teenage were kidnapped by the, I don't know, by the gunman. They are not known people, by unknown gunman. And because the family were not able to provide the amount which they required, as quick as they called for that, they killed the teenager, and then they just left his body on the street. So that's another challenge, is that most of the business are closing. People who have money, they don't want to put their children at risk, and they don't want to put their money at risk. They are leaving and they are closing their business. So lack of job opportunity is another issue for the refugees and for the returnees who are coming back to Afghanistan. Those are the challenges that currently we are facing. And for women also, as I mentioned, because of the drought, because of the insecurity, most of the families are coming to the city. Urbanization is another issue for today's situation of Afghanistan we are facing through. Those women need adjustment, those women need some skills and some training. But unfortunately, I'm so grateful for the international community support. So far, they are helping us in many ways, and we have seen lots of progress in many ways. You see women appointed as ambassador, women appointed as minister, women in many walks of life, number of NGOs are established in the country, and women in the top position. You can see the girls' education program are, especially in the university level in the cities, are quite okay. But those progress should not distract us from the fact that after 17 years of international community support, that violence against women is dramatically continue in the country, and it's if you go deep to the violence against women, it's go to the poverty, it is go to the mental health issues, to narcotics, and so many other issues that I'm thinking if we were smart enough to use the huge amount and the time that the international community is spent in Afghanistan and do some things for the people of Afghanistan and with the people of Afghanistan, we would be in a better situation today. We would have a better institution in the place. We would have better services in the place to create job opportunity for them. But unfortunately, most of the times things that happen out of Afghanistan in a very air conditioning room. They designed the project for the people of Afghanistan, and someone went to Afghanistan to implement that project with a very high cost without knowing a single thing, without knowing nothing about Afghanistan. If you see the amount they are spending in Afghanistan compared to the achievement is nothing. We spent huge amount of money, but at the end the result is very low. And it is because still nationalization is not in the priority. Still so many things happen in a way which is designed out of Afghanistan. I can give you a small example that how local organization can organize or design projects which can be sustainable and can be implementable in Afghanistan. Back in 2006, when I was very new in Herat and went from Kabul, I was thinking in the whole city there was, and still there is a few, there was no a kind of place that when girls or women would like to go and spend some time to be free of, because we have restaurants for men and women, but it is not very common for a single woman to go to a restaurant, just single, so you have to go with a group of friends or something. Sometimes you need to be alone, you need by yourself to go to a restaurant to spend some time or waiting for your friends. That opportunity was not in Herat, and I was thinking, we should do some things by like a coffee shop. But because the name of the coffee shop, when you translate to Persian, it is not very a good name to be accepted by the society. We put the name of like small restaurant, like for a snack and serving something. That restaurant is created back in 2005 with a small amount of support by the Finland embassy. Because that restaurant made in a way that's women for women restaurant. The waiters are women and the customers are women. A little discrimination for men, I'm sorry, men about that. But we do not forget men. We open a little window for takeaway for men, and men can just go and have takeaway, but women can go and enjoy sitting in the beautiful environment of the restaurant. So that was the small amount, like $6,000 back in 2006, but still you can see that restaurant is running. A number of women are trained on that restaurant as a waiters, as a cook, and then from that restaurant is a kind of a connection point, is a meeting point. They find their way, they got some better job from that, they start the job in the restaurant, then they find a better job. With that $6,000, it is 2018, still the restaurant is in the place. Still women enjoying going to that restaurant. There's a small restaurant, but young girls are celebrating their birthday over there, their graduation party. They're completely free and allowed by their family to go to that because the family know that restaurant is, and it is made in a very nice way that has a reflection glasses. Women can see outside, but no one can see inside. So they are really enjoying being there. If we spend money on that kind of a small project in a way to design with the people, for the people, we can see the result. I challenge if someone show me a project with $20,000 back in 2 years ago and show the result today. But with $6,000 after 12 years or I don't know how many years, still you can see the result of that project. Similar to that project for the victim, for the survivors of violence against women who are coming for staying in the safe house. But you know, I think in many countries are the same. If you apply for divorce, you have to wait for 1 year. And in Afghanistan, the divorce is going through 3 levels of courts. It is primary court, city court, and then Supreme Courts. So it takes at least a year. They need to stay there. We provide them with some vocational skill that at the time that they're receiving their divorce, they learn some skill over there. And we create a kind of bakery for a number of women who are survivors of violence. It's 2 years from that bakery. That bakery become so well-known brand nowadays. And every morning up to 9 o'clock, they are providing pastries, breads, and stuff for 76 supermarkets. 20 survivors are working on that restaurant. So the project is ended. We hand over to the group of women. They are continue running that kind of little factory or call them bakery. So if we think the way we develop a kind of project to empower women, I think empowered women will raise empowered children, will create powerful community. So we should rethink how we can design a project and how we can reach women in a way that it should be implementable in their village, implementable in their area, and have a long-term and sustainable result. And we can change their life, because women are mother, and mother are always creator, and they can change the world to be a better place for our children to live and for everybody. So I would like to stop in this point, and I know many questions you have in mind and you would like to raise and ask.
My question to Ali is now, is the situation different in eastern Afghanistan? Does the findings match with your studies?
So the study, actually, the name of this, our research, Refugees Return to Poverty, Unemployment, and Despair, Afghanistan labor market, and the status of women. As I want to repeat a couple of things here. This is a study conducted by VIDC in cooperation with our Afghanistan partner, Afghanistan Development and Peace Research Organization, ADPRO, that's headed by Emal Haidary, researcher and also journalist with AFP in Kabul. The study actually provides an overview and analysis of the Afghan labor market, with a special focus on the informal sector and, of course, the status of women. And it's a part of a larger study called Drought. It's strengthening livelihoods of Afghan refugees and Pakistani host communities, currently being implemented by our partner organization Faces Pakistan in Lahore, together with Caritas Austria and Caritas St. Pölten, and the Austrian Development Agency has commissioned the research. So back in the second half of 2016, more than 500,000 Afghan refugees were forcefully returned from Pakistan. So this massive influx exacerbated the situation, the socioeconomic situation of that Afghanistan was already going through. And most of these Afghan returnees settled in and around Kabul and eastern Afghanistan to receive basic services and to seek employment. And that's particularly around the major city like Jalalabad and Kabul itself. So you may know that before I come to the main findings, actually, I will not focus too much on all the interviews, but mainly on the returnees who were settled in two major informal settlements in the eastern Afghanistan, and one we focus on a settlement, a formal settlement in the north of Kabul. It's between Kabul and Parwan province. It's called Barikab. So as you know, Afghanistan is the second largest producer of refugees in the world after Syria. So according to UNHCR, 2.6 million Afghans are living out of Afghanistan. That's the registered refugees. And according to Afghan officials, the registered and unregistered refugees numbers go beyond 5 million Afghan refugees. And most of them live in Iran and Pakistan. And in Pakistan itself, the majority of these refugees live in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and also Balochistan provinces. These provinces are along the border with Afghanistan. And a significant number of the refugees live in Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan, Karachi, and Lahore. In March this year, we had a speaker here, Dr. Sana Alimia, who has done comprehensive research on the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, and she is the author of the Oral History of Afghan Refugees in Pakistan. And according to her research, 74% of Afghan refugees currently living in Pakistan were born in Pakistan, and only 26% were born in Afghanistan. So please bear with me with some statistics. So you may hear some more statistics during my presentation, but I will be happy to clarify later on. So why these all refugees return in 2016? Actually, it's all you know, the tense political relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan. When every time this relationship gets worse between the two countries, then Afghan refugees in Pakistan are used as a button to pressurize Afghan government, and now they are also used as a political scapegoat by the Pakistani authorities and by Pakistani establishment. And of course, Pakistan is accused by the Afghan government for sponsoring, for supporting militant groups, and some are like Haqqani Network, which is a recognized terrorist organization, and also the Taliban groups. So these accusations go back and forth. However, the refugees then used as a pressure whenever these tensions escalate, then Afghans refugees are used to pressure Afghan government and to some extent the international community that we will deport this big number back to Afghanistan, which Afghanistan is going through a special situation because of security and because of poverty, which I will speak in a bit. Since 2002, the refugees, the several millions that have returned, most of them, especially the unregistered refugees, more than half of them have settled in three provinces: Kabul, Kunduz, and Nangarhar province in the east. So it's these three provinces, apart from the registered refugees, that they go to formal settlements or they rent houses, but a lot of them go in informal settlements. And I don't want to talk too much on that here, but just one point on the IDPs. In 2010, there were more than 350,000 IDPs throughout the country, and most of them were because of the conflict, because of the war. But at the end of 2017, the number of IDPs, internally displaced people, jumped to 1.8 million. And that shows the magnitude of the problem, that it has not gone down, rather it's gone up, it's going up, and we will wait for the next figures at the end of 2018. So this might go up because now Ms. Pakzad mentioned the drought. We have a huge number of IDPs due to the drought and the conflict which has been going on for ages. And just a few brief statistics. Now I come to the labor market and then talk on the returnees. So the Afghan labor market, it's basically on the population of Afghanistan, there are three different figures because there is no exact statistics on the on Afghanistan's population. So according to Central Statistics Organization, which is the main body for the statistics in Afghanistan, so according to them, it's 29.1 million Afghan population. But UNDP, United Nations Development Program, according to them, it's more than 32 million. And according to the World Bank, it's almost 35 million. So you may hear different numbers about the population, but I stick to, in my study, only to 29 to, I always say, estimated 30 million or nearly 30 million population. So from this 30 million population, actually is almost 55%. Are at the working age, which means the working age in Afghanistan is 15 to 64. And approximately 6.5 million are employed or underemployed. So there are two different terms, employed or underemployed. That means they are looking for more work. And another 2.1 million are unemployed. So that's from nearly 16 million, more than half of them are somehow engaged in the labor market, which that engagement in the labor market does not necessarily mean they survive from poverty. They are hit by the poverty, which later on, if I have the time, I will talk about that. So from this working population, 77% live in the rural area. So there is a huge gap, rural and urban divide in the labor market in Afghanistan, because a huge number, a huge proportion of the working population live in the rural area, and a small number live in the urban areas, and the employment sector in the urban areas is limited due to the low female participation, women participation in the labor market, youth and elderly people. So agriculture is the largest employment sector, which provides 44% of the employment, and that's about 23% of the total country's GDP. And the female labor force participation, it's nearly, from the whole working age population, nearly 20%. So over 1 million women are engaged in employment. And a lot of them, of course, they are engaged in informal sector, in agriculture, when I say agriculture, so that includes livestock as well, and agribusinesses. So taking care of animals and livestock, so that includes that. And there are some issues or topics that actually prevent women to enter the labor market, and I'm sure Ms. Pakzad will agree, or in some cases will disagree with me. Of course, insecurity is a huge challenge for women throughout the country, and that prevents women to fully enjoy their right in the labor market. Cultural barriers, which I will discuss later on, cultural barriers and low levels of education and literacy. So according to Asia Foundation, they yearly conduct a survey in Afghanistan, and the survey is called the Survey of the Afghan People in 2017. So for women, the respondents are about 10,000 Afghans throughout the country. So it's pretty much reliable statistics. So literacy and education is the biggest problem for women to enter the labor sector. It's before security, it's before the cultural barriers or other issues. So literacy is a huge obstacle for women. And so women, apart from the domestic work, but their employment is restricted in agriculture, manufacturing, and services. So just a brief note on the education. So the level of education in Afghanistan generally is not that good in the last, despite of all this assistance. So nearly 35% of the population can read and write, just nationwide. But that's with a variation in the urban areas and rural areas, and also women and men. Just in urban areas, over 40% of women are literate in urban areas, while 66% of men can read and write. In rural areas, over 45% of men are literate compared to 13% of women. So in rural areas, quite for women is quite low. And a recent study by UNICEF in Afghanistan, the level of education, especially security and cultural stuff that prevent women, girls going to education, that's scary in the western provinces like Helmand, Kunduz, Helmand, Uruzgan, Zabul, Kandahar, these Paktia and Paktika, these Pashtun-dominated areas, up to 85% of girls cannot go to school because of security and cultural barriers. So, and of course, these cultural barriers, some of them are the social stigmatization, and working for, when women work in Afghanistan, there is always a social stigmatization. Ms. Pakzad may discuss more about it, but I just want to quote a line from Dr. Lina Abirafi, a leading gender studies scholar and author of Gender and International Aid in Afghanistan, The Politics and Effects of Intervention, a book which was published in 2009. And I quote her, quote, many Afghan men and women view women's employment as a reflection and reminder of their absolute poverty and destitution, an insult to men's dignity and questioning of men's ability to provide. One of the returnees, a female returnee, Farzana in Barikab, she views shares similar views, and she said, men feel ashamed if they see their women work outside the home. Men think this would be against their ghairat, which is a prestige, a honor, if their wives work outside the home. The man is so beghairat that cannot provide or cannot feed his wife. So this is, and I'm sure Ms. Pakzad has a lot to talk about this. But now I like to go briefly on these returnees. So two settlements, as I mentioned earlier, in the eastern Afghanistan. One was in Pule Besut, that's pretty much an urban settlement, informal settlement within Jalalabad city. And one was in Gambiri, which is a place between Nangarhar and Jalalabad. So if you come from Jalalabad, so it's closer to Jalalabad, and if you go from Kabul, drive from Kabul to Laghman, then it's, I think, closer, is on the way. But just a brief note, how many returnees and IDPs are in Nangarhar province. So Nangarhar alone has accommodated more than 400,000 IDPs and returnees across 26 informal settlements. So this is all in informal settlements and not formal. So those who could afford, they rent a house or they live in formal settlements. Across 26 informal settlements, and they are not all established recently. So the first one was established in 1990s. And so from these over 400,000 returnees and IDPs, nearly or over 275,000 are the recent returnees from Pakistan. and a small number also from Iran. But over 132,000 are IDPs, internally displaced people. And most of these IDPs are from various districts in eastern Afghanistan, particularly in Nangarhar, where Daesh and Taliban are active in different districts there. And in Kabul, more than 10,000 IDPs and returnee households, like families, in 60 different informal settlements in different sizes. And again, so that from 10,000 families, over 43,000 individuals are IDPs, and over 20,000 are returnees from Pakistan and Iran. And in Nangarhar and also in Kabul, these returnees and IDPs actually they seek shelter, security, and employment opportunities. So come back to Pule-Besut. As I said, this is inside Jalalabad city, the capital of Nangarhar province in eastern Afghanistan. This settlement houses around 100 families, mainly returnees from Pakistan. And the majority of these families, you know, they have large families, like many Afghan families. And usually one man or two men provide for the whole family. So, and the employment sources usually daily laborer, or casual work, but that's also not very regular. And in Gambiri as well, which is the we can show some of these pictures. Gambiri is also is a informal settlement with around 600 families live there. So this settlement is also characterized by poor accommodation, lack of water, electricity, insufficient sanitation facilities, and insecurity. So the biggest problem actually, or the difference between Gambiri settlement and Pule-Besut, actually they share the same problems like lack of water, lack of employment, no services. One issue that separates them, that's the security in Gambiri, actually. Despite of a military presence of a military corps there, that's called Selab, Qulurdu, that despite of that presence of that army base, the militant Taliban and different militant groups are very active. And the interviews, they said, you know, they have, from time to time, they have tried to recruit youngsters from the community. And that's, they were quite worried. And for Pule-Besut and Pule-Gambiri, actually, employment was not the most priority. They were looking for employment, they were seeking jobs, but that was not the most the priority issue for them. For them, housing, water was the most urgent needs. And they said, one of them said, housing first and then employment. So employment comes second when it comes to housing, because they think that you know, we need a protection from the nature, and also, you know, our women need also protection. So that was the major points actually in Gambiri and Pule-Besut. On the third settlement, a formal settlement, which we don't have a picture actually, this is called Gambiri, sorry, Barikap. It's called Barikap. It's in Australian literature, they call it Al-Azghan, because it was allocated for Afghan refugees whose application were denied in Australia. So it was meant for them to be relocated when they were deported to Afghanistan, but that did not work. But the settlement was established with the support of UNDP, Afghan government. Afghan government provided the piece of land in the middle of nowhere, whereas there was no water, there was no school, there was no road, nothing, just outside Kabul on the border with Parwan province. And it was meant for 1,400 individuals. But at the time we conducted the interviews, there were only 300 individuals, because a lot of them left the area because there was no water, there was no employment, and every time they wanted to go to work, They had to drive to Kabul. There was no public transport, and they could not afford to go to Kabul every time to seek employment. Or even in Barikab, there is. I visited this settlement was established in 2007. When I was in Afghanistan and worked as a journalist, I also visited this settlement actually a couple of times in 2010, 11. Things had not changed. So the complaints that the residents had in 2007, 8, they had the same complaints in 2010 and 11. And when we received the transcripts of the interviews, actually the same problems existed. There was some improvements. There was no school, but there was a school, and the school was until the 9th grade. And this was bad for the girls because the high school was miles away, and for security reasons, families could not send their girls to high school. So girls were starting to drop out of school after 9th grade, and this was a major challenge for a lot of families in Barikab. So the job. Opportunities in Barikab was also not very promising. Here, for them, employment was the most important thing. For other two camps, housing and water, but for this camp, they suffered from lack of water, from lack of security, from lack of social services. But for them, they had a house because the houses were built by with the financial support of the Australian government and the UNDP and Afghan government. But they suffered from a lack of employment. They did not have jobs. They had houses, but they were not happy. They were not very. They said, "Well, this is a Western-style housing because there are no protection walls, and our families, our property is not protected. Our women are not protected. But we can manage." But employment was very important, and the same here. Women, when they first moved to this formal settlement, there was some training opportunities for them in carpet weaving, tailoring, and embroidery beadwork. That's the non-form trainings. But I think that my time is running out, so I'm also almost done. So the embroidery work, this non-form embroidery work and tailoring, the carpet weaving, this is a huge industry in Afghanistan, especially carpet weaving. But there has been less and less investment, and of course, again, this whole security, whole industry labor market is heavily impacted by the security. Poverty, Afghanistan now in 2012-13, 38% of the population were under the line of poverty, and just in recent survey by Central Statistics Organization, so more than it's 55% of the population live under the line of poverty, and employment does not necessarily mean a guarantee against poverty. So even more than half of the people who are employed, they are poor. They live under the line of poverty. The picture, unfortunately, is not that great, and I want to end here. I'm sure you. I will leave the rest for the discussion. Thank you.
Am Ende möchte ich Sie noch darauf hinweisen, dass wir Sie jetzt noch gleich einladen werden zu einem kleinen Umtrunk und Snacks und dass Sie auf Ihren Stühlen auch Feedback-Formulare finden, die ich Sie bitte auszufüllen und draußen in die Box reinzuschmeißen. Und da möchte ich noch darauf hinweisen, dass wir am 22. November einen Film zu Afghanistan zeigen, einen Dokumentarfilm über einen Selbstmordanschlag bei der Premiere eines Theaterstücks über Selbstmordanschläge in Kabul 2014. Der Film wird am 22. November im Filmhauskino am Spittelberg gezeigt. Draußen finden Sie Informationsflyer dazu. Dankeschön.